This is the second tutorial that we would like to do to help you get underway here with extra payment scenario. So you can do a lot of different types of payments. The bank would allow you to pay forward a little bit extra principal. In the past, decades ago, they would have assessed a penalty, but that's usually no longer the case. They're going to allow you to pay extra. You just have to indicate that you want it to be applied to principal. The reason I chose 87 in the screenshot of your project was $87 turns out to be a twelfth of 1,040, meaning that by the time I reached the end of the year, I would have paid an extra payment altogether. In other words, 13 payments of 1,040 instead of 12. So that's why 87, but that could be lower or higher depending on what your circumstances might be. Now to calculate some of these details here in this extra payment scenario box, we have to just kind of reason it out together. Think about what we're trying to accomplish. In the second cell down, we want to figure out the months that we will need to pay off this loan. We know it's going to be less than 360 because we're paying more than what is required as a minimum payment. So I'm going to start with an equality. I'm going to use a function that we haven't used in the past. It's called NPER. It stands for number of periods, you might remember, and you've seen NPER elsewhere, but never as a function perhaps. And this function needs to have a rate, so I'm going to click on that rate, and I'll need to convert it to a monthly rate. So I divide by 12, comma. Now here's the important part. It needs to know what payment will I be making each time. So I'm going to have to actually make two different payments each time, the original 1,040 plus this $87 payment. What's crucial is I have to remember to make them negative at this point. Remember I mentioned in the first tutorial that the negative would play a key role. So I'm going to go with a negative and click on the 1,040, and then I want to also press the subtraction key again and do the 87. That makes it so that both quantities are negated, meaning it's going to bring the debt down. If they were positive, it would go in the wrong direction. Alright, that's probably the hardest part to NPER, is just remembering the importance of a negative. Then I'm going to do a comma. I'm going to click on the present value of the loan amount. That's $173,500. Future value will assume to be 0, and of course type is we'll assume it's the end of the month. So those are defaulted. We can just press return. And that has rounded. Just to double check on that, I'm pretty sure if I were to ask for some more decimals, there it is. So it didn't take exactly 294 months to pay and be debt free. It took a rounded 294. But you can set your decimals however you'd like. Months saved is pretty straightforward actually. You're going to go with an equality. You're going to click on the number of years times 12. That would give you the 360 that you need. And then you simply subtract the months to pay. What this is telling us is by paying an extra $87, you have saved a whopping 66 months. I'm going to abbreviate or round that, better said, to 66. That's pretty impressive, 66. But you can't relate to it often unless you maybe put it in terms of years. So years saved is pretty easy to do. You're going to click on the 66 and you're going to divide, of course, by 12 since there are 12 months to the year. So in a nutshell, just by simply paying $87 per month, you have paid your debt off 5.5 years sooner. Now that's only half of the excitement, because the other half is how much money have you saved by paying a little bit more and getting more aggressive to be debt free. So what we want to do next is we want to calculate the new interest. The new interest will be a pretty simple formula. I'm going to go quantity, and the reason I want to use a parenthesis here is I want to combine my two payments together. So I'm going to click on the 1,040 plus the $87 and close it up with a right parenthesis, multiply it by the number of months it's going to require that I pay these two quantities. And that would be the reason we did the NPER right there. By clicking on the 294 months, that will show us how much we paid all together. Now, I'm going to hit return, but this isn't my final answer, as you might recall. But what it does show is how much I've paid all together. I'm going to double click, get back in there. I'm going to carefully go with the subtraction, And just like we did before, we're going to subtract out how much we borrowed. Moral of the story is total takeaway principal equals interest, the principal being the loan amount. When I hit return, there is my new interest, which is very different than the total interest from the original loan. And so interest saved is just the difference between the two. Click on the total interest from the original amortization minus the new interest, and there you have it. So in addition to saving 5.5 years of making home loan, mortgage payments, you've saved an amazing amount of $42,722 in interest because you got more aggressive and you got yourself out of debt sooner. If I change that $87 to say maybe $25, then the interest saved, of course, diminishes, as would the years saved. On the other hand, if I got more aggressive and say I moved it from the $87 to $100 a month extra, I'm saving 6.1 years and even more in interest. So that's kind of why we set those up to be nice and flexible, so you can do a lot of different what-ifs. Okay, so to finish out the project, we simply need to calculate the new balances based on this extra principal. I need to build some months, but this time I'm going to do a little differently, just for the sake of variety, I guess. So I'm going to do month 1, and then below month 1 I'm going to say I want month 2 to be equal to month 1 plus 1. And I'm going to test drive this and see if it's working, and it is. So that's another way you can get numbers to go into a pattern, is just teach it the pattern in a very straightforward way and you're ready to go. New balance. New balance will be what it was right at the very beginning of the loan, that is month 0. So I'm going to click on the loan amount. Interest, we always calculate interest first, just like we did over in the left-hand side. So we're going to click on the new balance, and we're going to multiply it by the original APR. We've got to do an absolute cell reference on the APR, so Command T or F4. We divide it by 12, and that calculates the interest payment. And it isn't any different than the month 1 from the previous schedule, but things will definitely change starting in month 2, so hold on. Principal. Principal is equal to how much we've made in the payment. Take away, we've got to, of course, absolute cell reference that, so don't forget to Command T on a Mac or F4 on a PC. So how much we have paid altogether minus how much was in interest. And we do not want to do an absolute cell reference right now because that interest is going to keep fluctuating. It's going to keep decreasing, and so that's why we don't touch it with an absolute cell reference. I'm going to hit return here. Once again, no difference from the original amortization. But now things do start to change in month 1 because I'm going to add the extra principal. So I'm going to move up here to $87 and click on it. Because we want to stay fixed on that cell J3, we're going to need to absolute cell reference it. There are other techniques that you might consider doing where you're allowing, say, the opportunity to change it from month to month. But I'm going to just stick with this J3 and call it good. And maybe I can explain what I mean at the very end. And finally, the new balance is just a little bit different than the previous amortization. We take the month before, which is the original debt, and we subtract out not only the original principal, but we also subtract out the extra principal. So it's, what is that, I-15 take away J-15. That's pretty basic, but that allows us to bring the debt down $87 quicker. And there you have it. That new balance is different than the original balance. And I believe if we've got it running correctly, we just need to test drive it for a few months. So let's highlight all 4 of these cells. Let's pull it down carefully. And let's evaluate. And I think as you look back and forth, you're going to start to see that the principal's climbing faster and the interest back and forth is descending faster. Okay, I think we're ready to go. So this time, to get it all the way down to where I want to stop, I need to highlight all 5 of those cells that are running correctly. Don't forget that we did things a little differently with this month. We added 1 to the previous month just to use a new approach. I highlight all 5 and I test drive them for a few rows, and it appears that things are behaving correctly. And if it doesn't work for you, don't panic. You just need to troubleshoot and maybe rewind the video. I'm going to click with the black crosshair, and we're just going to carefully move down. It'll take a little bit. I'm going to stop every once in a while, catch my breath, and see how it's going. Right there you can see after 102 months, look at how dramatically different that is. You owe $139,000 instead of $150,000. I'm going to click again carefully, get the black crosshair and drag some more. And if you go too far, we'll simply delete. Don't panic if that happens to you. You can just always delete things. There's 192 months. Now you might remember that we made a projection up here at the top that we would be debt-free in about 294 months. So I know that if I keep working this through, I'll get to that point, 294 months. Alright, so let me get back to where I was. I'm going to get the black crosshair again, carefully drag it down. There we go. And a little bit farther still. So it takes a little bit of patience to where you can zero out. Alright, I'm looking over on the left hand side and I'm noticing that 294 is waiting there for me, so I should have thought of doing that earlier. I'm going to stop it right there and go 1 month beyond 294. That's exactly what I had hoped for. If I had gone a little too far, no problem. You can just delete some cells, highlight them, and do a delete. Sometimes on a laptop you have to hit FN delete. But now what we have in the month 295, which is, remember how it was 294.3 or so we had to go a little bit beyond month 294. Here's a nice thing to do. I found this works pretty well. I just highlight the 3 cells that aren't making much sense and I delete those. And then I have to think this through. In month 295, I was paying just a mere $1.77 of interest, which implies that the principal payment is simply going to be, that is the last check we write to the bank, is the balance, $353.20. When I hit enter, I guess I have to also take and clone this or replicate this formula down, but that should kick out a 0. The later models of Excel sometimes make those just a hyphen, which implies 0. There's a way to default that out to be a 0, but I'm not going to bother with that right now. Alright, so I think we've achieved our goal of getting out of debt a lot sooner. And the nice thing is it's very flexible. As you go up here and you and your spouse maybe get together and say, you know what, we can do better. This month right here we could actually throw in $100 and do a little bit better. So you can do all kinds of what ifs. You can do an undo on that. Control Z takes care of that for us, but you have a lot of flexibility. Bottom line is you have paid off your debt 5.5 years sooner, saved almost a $43,000 amount of interest by doing that, and you've got flexibility now. You can keep changing that and do a lot of what ifs. Hopefully this experience was a good one for you. Sorry the second tutorial lasted a little longer than the first, but I think everything worked out well for us. So have a great day and thanks for visiting.